Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. When Troy broke ground on his dream pool, he didn't expect a war, but a clipboard queen from the neighboring HOA had other plans. Fake rules, sabotage, and midnight sludge attacks. This wasn't just a turf dispute, it was personal. And she picked the wrong man to mess with. When my wife Jenny and I first drove out to see the land, it was nothing but 4 acres of raw dirt and pine trees stretching just beyond city limits. But the moment we stepped out of the truck and felt the breeze move through the open space like it had a soul of its own, I knew this was where we'd build our home. I'm not a fancy man. I work with my hands. I've spent 2 decades as an electrician fixing what's broken and wiring up dreams for other people. This time I wanted to build something of my own. So I did. Over the course of 18 months, with calloused palms and late nights under floodlights, I built us a house from the ground up. A strong, modest ranch-style home with a wraparound porch, a backyard made for family cookouts, and, eventually, plans for a swimming pool to beat that brutal summer heat. Life out here was quiet, peaceful. Our daughter Ellie could chase frogs and fireflies without worrying about traffic or noisy neighbors. At least, that's what I thought. On paper, our property was unincorporated, not part of any homeowners association. I'd confirmed it myself when we closed the sale, checked plat maps, titles, zoning records, all of it. But just beyond our tree line stood a gated neighborhood called Silver Pines, all white fences and manicured grass, the kind of place where everyone had matching mailboxes and the smell of power trips lingered thicker than fresh-cut lawn. I didn't pay them much mind. Their HOA had nothing to do with me, or so I assumed. That changed the moment I broke ground on the pool. It was a warm Saturday morning when I fired up the excavator. By noon, I'd barely finished digging the outline when a silver Lexus pulled into my gravel drive uninvited. Out stepped a woman in beige heels and a blazer like she was late for a country club meeting. She carried a clipboard and wore a smile sharp enough to cut steel. "You must be Troy," she said, like we were old friends. Karen Westbrook, president of Silver Pines HOA. She didn't wait for me to shake her hand before continuing. "I'm here because we've had some concerns about the construction on your lot." I wiped the sweat from my brow. "I own the land. All the permits are filed. There a problem?" She gave me that look. The kind people give a stray dog sniffing around their porch. "Well, under Section 3A and 5D of our community guidelines, all exterior additions must be approved by the HOA Design Review Committee. Pools especially." I let out a short laugh. "Ma'am, I'm not in your HOA. You can take your Section 3 whatever and apply it where it actually matters." Her face stiffened. "We'll see about that," she said, and with a curt nod she walked back to her car. I watched her drive away, already knowing in my gut that woman wasn't finished. 3 days after Karen's surprise visit, I found a thick envelope stuffed into my mailbox. No postage, just hand-delivered like a threat wrapped in stationery. Inside was a formal letter bearing the Silver Pines HOA letterhead, complete with a stamped seal and Karen's elegant, too-perfect signature. The document was titled Notice of Violation and Cease Construction Order. Apparently, I was now in violation of unauthorized structural development within HOA boundaries and had 14 days to cease all construction activities and remove the illegal pool installation. I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I stood at the edge of the pit I'd dug with my own hands, the future site of a backyard dream for my family, and let the paper crumple slowly in my fist. We weren't in Silver Pines. I had made damn sure of it before we ever broke ground. But now they were acting like I'd pitched a circus tent in their backyard. That afternoon, I called the county office to double-check the boundary lines, and sure enough, nothing had changed. My parcel sat cleanly outside of Silver Pines' jurisdiction. No easements, no annexations, no HOA authority whatsoever. Still, I knew better than to assume logic would stop someone like Karen. She wasn't sending these letters because of concern. She was drawing a battle line. The next day, a second envelope showed up. This time slipped under our door while we were out buying gravel. Inside, a printed copy of the HOA Community Handbook with multiple sections highlighted in yellow and a sticky note on the front. "You are not exempt. We expect compliance." No signature, but the handwriting matched Karen's neat, looping style from the previous letter. I showed the note to Jenny. She shook her head, muttering, "This woman's got too much time on her hands." But I could tell it rattled her. It rattled me too. because it wasn't just a disagreement anymore, it was a threat wrapped in a rulebook. 2 days later, I came home from a job to find a man in khakis and a tucked-in polo shirt wandering along my fence line with a clipboard. I stepped out of the truck and asked if he needed something. He squinted at me. "I'm with Silver Pine's HOA Compliance Committee. We received a report that a non-permitted in-ground pool was being built here." "You received that report from the woman who drove onto my land uninvited," I snapped. "Now get the hell off my property." He backed away without argument, but not before making a note on his clipboard. That night, my lawyer friend Kyle helped me draft a cease and desist notice of my own. Formal language, registered delivery, all of it. We sent it to the HOA board and to Karen directly. It stated clearly, "My land is private, outside your authority. Any further harassment, surveillance, or correspondence would constitute civil trespass and harassment." A normal person would have stopped there. But I was already starting to learn Karen Westbrook wasn't normal. The following Monday, just after breakfast, a white pickup with the county logo on the side pulled into my driveway. I was out back double-checking measurements for the rebar framing when Jenny stuck her head out the kitchen door and called, "Honey, someone from the county's here." I wiped my hands on a towel and made my way out front, expecting maybe a zoning follow-up or something about the permit process. Instead, the man who stepped out of the truck introduced himself as Thomas Hill, sanitation inspector. "We received an anonymous complaint," he said, flipping open a binder, "about unsafe water containment and soil contamination tied to a private pool under construction." I just stared at him. "Contamination? There's no water in it. It's a hole with steel rods and a PVC shell." He shrugged. "I still have to check." So I walked him around the site, showed him everything. The sealed containers, the fact that nothing was operational, no plumbing connections, even live yet. He made some notes, took a few pictures, and to his credit said, "Honestly, everything looks good. I'll file the report as unfounded." I thanked him, but the knot in my stomach was tightening. Something about his demeanor told me he'd expected this outcome, like he'd been through something similar before. The next day, it was zoning. A woman in a navy blazer with a clipboard showed up mid-morning. "We're here to confirm property line compliance in response to a community complaint about encroachment." I raised an eyebrow. "Let me guess. Anonymous?" She gave me a tired look. "Yep." So again, I walked someone around the lot, pointed out the boundary markers, and even produced a copy of the survey map from the original purchase. She looked at it, nodded, and said, "This is textbook. You're good." I thanked her, but before she left, I asked, "You ever get complaints from Silver Pines before?" She paused, then gave me a half smile. "Let's just say you're not the first independent homeowner they've tried to fold into their little empire." By Wednesday, the third visitor arrived, a tall, quiet man from the fire marshal's office. He claimed there had been a tip about unregulated open electrical components around a water-adjacent structure. I nearly choked. "I'm a licensed electrician," I said flatly. "There's no open circuitry within 100 feet of the dig site." We walked through it anyway. He spotted the underground conduit, saw that it was capped and marked. Everything met code, and he left with a polite nod and a copy of my license, probably for the file he'd have to close. 3 surprise inspections in 4 days, all anonymous, all unfounded. And I didn't need a detective to figure out where they were coming from. Karen wasn't just pestering me anymore. She was trying to overwhelm me with bureaucracy. Death by 1,000 paper cuts. And then, like clockwork, the next envelope arrived, certified mail this time. Inside was a petition filed with the county zoning board, spearheaded by none other than Silver Pine's HOA. It proposed a revision of district lines to include undeveloped adjacent properties requiring regulation for neighborhood cohesion and safety. My name and parcel were front and center. They were actually trying to forcibly incorporate my land into their HOA. I sat at my kitchen table that night, staring at the paperwork. Jenny sat across from me in silence, one hand on my arm. We both knew what this meant. It wasn't about a pool anymore. It was about control. Karen wanted my land in her territory, to bend it, and us, under her thumb. But she'd picked the wrong damn family. 2 nights after we received the petition paperwork, something didn't sit right. I couldn't explain it. Just one of those gut feelings you get when the air goes still and the silence feels loaded. The dog, usually snoring on the porch, was pacing. Jenny had already gone to bed, and I sat in my shop going over wiring plans for the pump system when the power blinked. Not the house, just the feed to the pump box outside. I walked out with a flashlight, barefoot in the gravel, and followed the trench to the equipment shed I'd built next to the dig site. The air smelled wrong, oily, metallic. I opened the panel and found a mess of shredded wires dangling like vines from a storm-battered tree, not cut clean, ripped, torn like someone had yanked them out with bare hands or dull pliers. The conduit was cracked, the weather seal broken. I stood there, staring at the mess under the harsh glare of my flashlight, rage slowly spreading from the base of my spine to the tips of my ears. This wasn't an accident. No animal did this. No freak voltage. Someone came onto my land and deliberately destroyed the electrical core of my pool system. I checked the camera mounted on the pole facing the shed. Dead. The feed line had been severed too. It hadn't recorded a damn thing. That night, I barely slept. The next morning, I called Kyle and we filed a police report. It didn't take long for the deputy to confirm forced tampering, but with no usable footage, it went down as unknown vandalism. That phrase felt like a joke. I knew exactly who was behind it, even if I couldn't prove it. Later that afternoon, while scrolling through the Silver Pines community Facebook page, purely for recon, I saw a fresh post from none other than Karen Westbrook. Her tone was syrupy, but the message was laced with venom. It's unfortunate when some neighbors refuse to uphold even the basic standards of community integrity. We all must be willing to sacrifice a little for the greater aesthetic and safety of Silver Pines. Progress requires compliance. Compliance requires discipline. The comments were full of praise, emojis, and the occasional amen, but it read to me like a declaration of war. Not a word about me or my property directly, but the timing was too clean. The sabotage had her fingerprints all over it, even if the law needed more than gut instinct. So I fought back the only way I knew how. I doubled security, replaced the cameras with solar backups and cellular feeds that couldn't be shut off locally, reinforced the shed, wired alarms, motion lights, and set up a perimeter alert system. If they came again, I'd be ready. Jenny asked me that night, "Do you think it's over?" I stared out into the tree line where the shadows swallowed the fence and quiet covered every footstep. "No," I said. "I think it's just beginning." It happened at 3:17 a.m. I know the exact time because the alert on my phone buzzed me awake like a fire alarm. The perimeter cameras rigged after the sabotage had triggered all at once, motion detected at the south end, near the back gate. I threw on jeans, grabbed my flashlight and sidearm, and sprinted to the hallway. Jenny was already sitting up, eyes wide in the dark. "What is it?" "Someone's on the property." I didn't answer any further, just moved. By the time I reached the kitchen window that overlooked the dig site, my stomach dropped. There were headlights, 2 sets, a white flatbed truck, and what looked like a tractor hauling a rusted tank. At first, I thought they were trying to steal something. Then I saw her, Karen Westbrook, in a neon yellow vest, clipboard in hand, standing next to the open tailgate of the flatbed like a foreman overseeing a demolition site. She barked orders at the men working with her, 3 in total. One climbed onto the tank. Another opened a chute. A low mechanical hum started up, the pump motor, and then it began. A thick stream of dark, sludgy muck poured out like tar, cascading over the edge of my unfinished pool. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Mud, gravel, broken tile, pieces of scrap metal and glass. And the smell. Within seconds, it hit the house like a punch. It wasn't just dirt, it was manure. One of the men laughed and shouted into the dark, "Compliments of Karen!" My hands trembled as I started recording from my phone. I had cameras, yes, but I wanted every angle, every second. I stormed out the door, boots crunching over gravel, yelling, "Hey, get the hell off my property!" They didn't flinch. Karen actually turned, saw me, and smiled like I was a child she'd just caught coloring on the walls. "Troy," she said sweetly, raising her voice to carry over the hiss of the pump. "I warned you about unapproved structures. This is a necessary correction." I stopped 10 feet from her, heart racing, every muscle in my body screaming for action. But I didn't move. I didn't swing. I didn't scream. I just kept filming. "You're trespassing. You're destroying private property. You're going to jail." Karen waved a folder in my direction. "Silver Pines Homeowners Association has voted. Your land is in violation of updated regional standards." I laughed, sharp and bitter. "Your HOA doesn't extend to this property. You know that. The county knows that." Her face darkened. "You brought this on yourself." The men finished their work fast. Within minutes, the pool was filled nearly halfway with reeking sludge, glass, and what looked like roofing debris. The liner was torn, the framing smashed inward. $50, maybe $60,000 of work, gone in under 10 minutes. As the trucks pulled away, one of the workers tossed a sign into the muck. I walked over after they left and pulled it out with gloved hands. In bold, black letters it read, "This property is now under review for remediation, Silver Pines, HOA." I stood there in the silence that followed, the sun just beginning to color the sky behind the trees. Jenny joined me barefoot, her face pale. "What now?" she whispered. I didn't answer right away. I just stared down at the wreckage, jaw tight, heart pounding like a war drum. Now it was my turn. By 7 a.m., I was already at the sheriff's office, USB stick in hand, and the footage loaded with timestamps, clear audio, and high-res video of Karen orchestrating what amounted to a full-blown environmental crime. The deputy on duty, a no-nonsense woman named Garcia, watched the footage in silence, her face turning from indifferent to alarmed by the time the second truck emptied half a ton of waste into what was clearly a private, regulated construction site. She looked at me and said, "You're pressing charges, right?" "Damn right I am." Within an hour, officers were out at my property taking statements, photographing the damage, and securing what was now considered a crime scene. Jenny and I watched from the porch as they roped off the pool with yellow tape and sifted through the debris like forensic techs. One of them even took samples of the sludge for lab analysis. Apparently, dumping organic waste without permit or containment might qualify as a hazmat violation. Karen hadn't just trespassed. She'd committed environmental vandalism, malicious destruction of private property, and possibly more, depending on what the chemical analysis found. While the investigation kicked off, my lawyer Kyle went into overdrive. He filed civil claims the same afternoon: trespassing, vandalism, environmental damage, and emotional distress. But that wasn't all. He also dug into financial records and HOA filings. That's when things really started unraveling. Turns out, the equipment used for the dumping, both the truck and the tractor, had been rented through a corporate HOA account tied to Silver Pines. Karen had signed the rental agreements herself, citing community beautification as the project description. We got copies from the equipment company. She'd even authorized an invoice to be billed directly to HOA funds. In other words, Karen had weaponized HOA resources to carry out her vendetta. Even worse, a whistleblower emerged. A junior board member from Silver Pines, someone who'd clearly had enough of Karen's empire building, came forward with internal emails and meeting notes. There it was in black and white, Karen bragging about teaching the independent lot a lesson and bringing the straggler into compliance one way or another. One line stood out above all the rest. The county might be slow, but pressure, sabotage, and optics go a long way. That line alone became our smoking gun. The sheriff's office opened a formal investigation. Detectives interviewed HOA members, subpoenaed financial records, and froze the HOA's operating account. Karen naturally tried to play innocent, claiming everything was a misunderstanding and that the dumping was symbolic protest. That laughable excuse didn't last long. As the case gained steam, neighbors started whispering. Some supported her, but most realized they'd been manipulated into bankrolling a personal war. And I didn't stop. I documented every repair, every dollar spent on cleanup. I collected soil samples. I printed photographs and built timelines. They thought I'd roll over. They thought I'd walk away. But they picked a fight with the wrong man. And now the law was catching up. The courthouse was packed the morning of the hearing. Locals, reporters, even former HOA members crammed into the rows behind me, their curiosity almost tangible. Word had spread fast. Silver Pines president faces criminal charges for property sabotage. The headline had run in the local paper just 2 days earlier, and now everyone wanted to see how Queen Karen would try to explain herself in front of a judge. She walked in wearing a white pantsuit like she was about to host a garden party, not face 4 felony counts. Her smile was tight, but she kept her chin high, surrounded by a small squad of HOA loyalists and a very nervous-looking attorney. The prosecution opened with a bang. They played the full video from my security system on the courtroom screen. Karen barking orders, the truck pumping waste, her voice on camera declaring my pool an unauthorized structure. Every juror leaned forward. Even the judge arched an eyebrow. Then came the paper trail. Rental agreements signed by Karen. HOA funds diverted without board approval. The email about pressure, sabotage, and optics. The witness testimony from the board member who had the guts to step forward and say, "We were never told what the money was really for." She acted alone. Karen's lawyer tried spinning it all as a passionate civic action gone too far. He even had the nerve to claim that I had provoked the entire situation by refusing to participate in community standards. I looked over at Kyle, who leaned forward and whispered, "Desperation looks good on them." When it was our turn, Kyle didn't waste a second. He walked the jury through the timeline. Every letter, every uninvited inspection, every violation of my rights as a private landowner. He brought out the engineers, the soil experts, the invoice breakdown for repairs. He even had Jenny testify, and when she described waking up to the smell of manure and the sight of our destroyed backyard, the courtroom went still. Then I took the stand. I didn't dramatize. I didn't yell. I told them what happened, how I'd built that pool with my own hands, how I'd spent months making that place a home for my family, and how someone who had no authority over me decided she could ruin it because she didn't like being told no. When I stepped down, I caught Karen looking at me, her smile finally gone. She looked small, exposed. The verdict didn't take long. Guilty on all counts: criminal vandalism, environmental damage, misuse of HOA funds, and conspiracy to commit trespass. The judge didn't pull punches. 1 year of jail time, restitution of $180,000, mandatory dissolution of Silver Pines HOA pending county audit. Every board member was stripped of office, and the HOA's assets were frozen. Karen didn't speak when the cuffs clicked around her wrists. She just looked straight ahead, that sharp little jaw clenched like she still couldn't believe any of this was real. But it was. I watched her walk out of that courtroom, not as the self-appointed queen of Silver Pines, but as a convict. The pool is finished now. Not just finished, transformed. What started as a simple backyard project has become a centerpiece, a symbol of everything we stood up for. I rebuilt it from scratch, this time with deeper foundations, stone tiling, a waterfall edge, LED lighting that changes color with the mood of the sky, and a swim-up bar where Jenny and I sip iced tea on Sundays while Ellie splashes nearby. It's not just a pool anymore. It's a fortress, a celebration, a line in the sand. The old wreckage is gone, bulldozed, hauled out, replaced with clean water, clean lines, and clean peace. What remained of the vandalized shell now lives only in photos tucked away in our legal archive and in a small brass plaque I had mounted to the stone column at the entrance to the yard. It reads, "This is not HOA territory. This is where dreams are built, not buried." And just above the swim-up bar, fixed to the cedar pergola, another plaque catches the light every afternoon. "Flood a pool, go to jail. Easy math, Karen." Silver Pines HOA is gone. The audit revealed more misuse of funds, unexplained expenses, and irregular elections than anyone expected. The county formally dissolved the association. The neighborhood now manages itself with a voluntary council, and funny enough, they've been extremely polite ever since. A few neighbors even stopped by after the trial to apologize. Most didn't, but I don't need their apologies. What I needed was exactly what I got: justice. Karen serving her time in county jail. Last I heard, she was trying to appeal her sentence, claiming political motivation or some nonsense. But her name is mud now, even among her former supporters. People remember what she did. They remember what she cost them. And they remember how she fell. As for us, we live free. The sun rises over our land just like it always has. But now, it feels earned. I still wire houses for a living. Still come home tired, boots scuffed, and hands sore. But every time I pull into the drive, past that plaque, past the sound of water dancing into the pool, I smile. Because this land, this dream, belongs to us. And no one, no clipboard queen or fake authority with a rulebook will ever take it from us again.